continue with our formatting to wrap this section up. A couple more things. First of all, I've got everything enhanced the way I think it needs to be. Maybe I would make a couple of changes, but for now we'll leave it as it is. Next thing I want to do is look at numbers themselves. I'm going to take the formatting off of this section just so we can take a real good serious look at the numbers. So first of all, I've got my totals and my average, and you notice my average comes out with the decimals. We had that going on down here as well. So this was the average for each student, their average points, and this was the average points on each of the test categories. So what I'd like to do now is remove those decimals. Remember, my audience that may be looking at this may not be interested in the exact decimal point that goes with their average. As a student and teacher, we're always interested. We're going to eliminate the decimals, but it will not leave the calculation. So here we have 54.5. That's going to remain 54.5, although it should round up to 55. 57.5 should round up to 58, but it does not change anybody's statistics. So I'm going to select this column, and up in the number group is where we can do many things with the numbers, present them in different ways. And in this group on the home tab, we have the decimal points here. We can decrease our decimals or increase them. So I'm going to decrease them, and you notice it rolled up to 55 points as an average and 58. If I bring them back, we'll see we're really back to where we were in the past. So we're doing this for ease of viewing. I'm going to do the same thing on row 13, selecting all those numbers with my open crosshairs. I'm going to delete those decimals as well. Same thing at the bottom where we practice making a 10% increase in our total points. Let's get rid of those decimals. So now it's cleaner, easier for the viewer to take a look at. One of the types of formatting you're going to be working on is called conditional formatting. Conditional formatting has to do with meeting certain conditions, and if the data meets certain conditions, it will be formatted according to your instructions. So for instance, if I select my total points and I want to identify everyone who has 230 points or more, and this could be any value, and remember, you may have at least 30 people or more in this class, not just the 8 that I've listed here. So I've selected that, and up on the home tab in the styles group, we have conditional formatting button. If you click on that, you'll see it allows me to work with the cells that I've highlighted. I can ask it to identify anything that's greater than a certain number, less than, between, or a range of certain numbers, and so on down the list. So I'm going to just say anything that's greater than, and I'm going to make 229 my number because I want 230 in there. 229. I can have it red, often a negative connotation, green a good connotation. Doesn't mean you have to live with those connotations. You can do some custom formatting, but I'm going to have them green and say okay. So these are all my people that are above 229 points. This person didn't quite make it. So it draws attention for whatever reason to those specifics. I'm going to go back to I want to select this again and go back to conditional formatting. And now I'm going to go down to managing my rules. I want to undo this so I can clear what I've done. Clear the rules from the selected cells. So now I'm going to do it again. That's this time anyone that's less than 225. And I'll have that be red. And it doesn't have to have the fill, but it really does draw attention that there were 2 people below 225. Maybe that's something that should be of concern. So I'm going to undo that. Well, I'll leave that for now. In this column, the averages, you can apply some other visual things under conditional formatting, and one that's really interesting is data bars. And the data bars, and I'm hiding it, so I'm going to choose my other column here in a second. The data bars fill in according to the value that's in there, the amount. So I'm going to try that on another column and see if we get a little more variance. Let me choose this column. Once again, I think I'll remove the fill so we can see the colors better. And I will format the column with data bars. Still not a lot of variance between my students, but you can see that the data bars add a visual that some people may not otherwise have seen by just looking at numbers. Okay, so let's undo all of those. And we're back to, last thing I wanted to do is go back to some simple math calculations. And down here we predicted what a 10% increase in total points would look like. So looking at that formula, we did B12 plus B12 times 0.1, which is 10%. That's like taking the original amount plus 110% more. On the next one over, I shortcutted that and I took C12, because that's the column I'm in, times 1.1, and that's for 10% increase. That's a quicker version. Maybe that's what you're more used to in doing it in math. So we're going to go ahead and ask the following questions. What if we had an increase in each of the students' work? Let's see if I can get that to work. Yeah. What if we had students go for a 30% increase in their total points? So Felicia has 225 points. What would a 30% increase look like? So to do that math problem, again, we try not to use numbers. We use the cell names. We'll start with an equal sign, equals F4 times H2. And Felicia would have 293 points. So that would be a goal that we might set for Felicia. So I'm going to go back now. This math calculation is easy, but we're going to be looking at what's called absolute and relative references. So we're going to use the totals column, and I'm going to delete because I know all I have to do is grab the fill handle. But I want to look at the math problem itself. You can see I'm going to clear all my work out here with no fill because I really want to look at these numbers. So the formula you can see is highlighted in blue. It's a sum of B4 through E4. When I pull that down, it applies the same formula to the next row. It is making an assumption that I want to find the total the same way I did in row 4, but I want to apply it to row 5. And that's correct. This is called a relative reference. Relative to where I am on the spreadsheet, it is applying the same formula. You move down one row, we'll change your formula by one row. B6 through E6. Move down a row, we'll apply the same formula, B7 through E7. This is called a relative reference. So relative to where I am, when I copy the formula down, it assumes I want to move down a row. So let's look now at our new formula we created. The formula itself isn't any different. It's multiplying two cells, the total points for Felicia, times a factor of 1.3, a 30% increase. So that's what I want. What we'll need to do is create an absolute reference. We really want to take all of our students' totals and multiply it times the factor of 1.3. So we've got this correct here. And I should be able to pull the fill handle down. And as I do, you notice there's no answer. Let's click on the next cell and see what we've got going on. It's moved down from Felicia to Emma, correct, but it's also moved down in column H to a blank cell, H3, incorrect. Next one, it's moving down with me, creating what's called a relative reference. I don't want it to be a relative reference. I do want it to move down and select my new student, my new row. F8 would be correct on this one, but not H6. I want it to use H2. So to correct that, it's a very simple task. All you need to do is select your cell, open it up. I like working in the open cell, and know that you want to make H2 the constant or an absolute reference. To do that, we're going to apply dollar signs. I'm going to do it before the H and after the H. Before the H, a dollar sign, and after the H. So in a most simplistic vocabulary would be it's like blue. Okay, this has now made H2 an absolute reference, meaning for every student, H2 will be applied. So let's look. H2, H2, H2. So relative reference changes as we copy down, and it applies the same formula to the next row. In this case, it could be a column across, would apply the same formula. Here, we've had to create a command that tells a particular cell or group of cells to remain constant. Okay, so with that in mind, I think I'll bring everything back the way it was. I'm going to do this. Selecting, holding my control key. I'm going to do some filling. Let's finish out our look. First time, remember, you don't hold the control key. Okay, let's do that. I'm going to use my yellow that I had here before and here. So I've got everything kind of coordinated. And I'll apply some grid lines to everything since we've already done that. Alright, so that completes some formatting tasks. You may run into a few others in a few directions that are a little different, but on the whole, this is how you could manually format yourself. Remember, we can always go back to some pre-made designs. Alright, with that in mind, let's get ready to make a chart.